want to welcome everyone to Book Carnival. Tonight, we are delighted to have Jeffrey Seiger with us, and he's going to discuss his new book, One Last Chance. And I'm going to get him up here. There we go. That's much better. Hi, Jeffrey. How are you doing?
Hi, Anne. Nice to see you and everybody.
Yeah, you can see them. We're just looking at you right now. Great picture, great background, and we can get talking about your book, One Last Chance. Was that written during COVID, or how did that work out?
Oh, that really, you put your finger on the essence of this whole book. I mean, I was looking to write a book that would, in this period, this is my 12th book in the series. Right. It would give Maggie, who's been the right hand of my chief inspector, Andreas Collies, for many, many years, it would give her time in the sun, her place. And I wanted it to be a book that focused on her strengths and her beliefs. And I meant by that her unquestioning loyalty to friends and family and deep faith in the church. But I also knew I'm writing a book in the middle of COVID times. I wanted to write something that neither ignored COVID or emphasized COVID, but something that's at its core was enmeshed in the effects of COVID. To do that, I needed to have some sort of a really special locale for it. And I was trying to figure out where should it be. I'd been to Ikaria several times, but not until the writing gods intervened did I realize I'd found the place, because with its long experience or history, unique history of enduring all sorts of obstacles and overcoming them. And by that, I mean, it had been an object of plunder, an object by pirates, by conquerors. It was a place that had really suffered extraordinarily so. It was also the poorest island in the Aegean. And it suffered for so many years. Yet, it had a reputation for some of the longest living people in the world. On Ikaria, people lived, 1 in 3 lived into their 90s. Many lived into their hundreds. Men lived and women lived 10 years longer than other people in Greece. And I realized, with respect to this COVID situation and Maggie, I had found the perfect setting for my book. So I have that is Maggie's island. That is her ancestral island. And she returns home for the funeral of her 104-year-old grandmother. And when she gets there, her grief turns into suspicion, because she learns that the grandmother had been doing very well. She was very healthy up until the time she passed away. And there are bruises on her, unexplained bruises on her arms that indicate a botched IV that no one can explain. And as she's talking to the woman who had prepared her for burial, she learns that there are other long-living Icarians who had also passed away under the same questionable circumstances. That's how this book comes to be in COVID times. COVID is integral, but it doesn't in any way consume the book, far from it. It's just part of the background mystery. There's another subplot, another plot in this, because while this is going on back in Ikaria, Andreas and his chief detective, Yanni, are, by the way, you've gone off the screen. You've disappeared.
You're fine.
No, I was just pointing that out to you.
Okay.
The Yanni are back in Athens, pursuing a ring, a protection and smuggling ring within the Greek DEA, and also the potential that they are involved in the assassination of an undercover cop. And as they pursue their investigation, and Maggie is doing her suspicious tracking of people, the two cases come together. And it becomes pretty clear that there's some international intrigues at foot here that are going to likely make it difficult to bring anybody to justice. So it's up to So it's up to Andreas with his Hail Mary long pass at getting justice for the victims that the story really focuses on in the end. And it really brings Maggie into this. It has her questioning her life, questioning so many things. And it's all done in COVID times.
It's, I have read about, I didn't know how to pronounce it, of course, but I had read about that island with the, and the history of longevity there is astounding.
It's one of the blue zones of the country, of the world. There's 5 blue zones where people live that long life. In fact, New York Times wrote an article called "The Island Where People Forgot to Die" or Forget to Die. And that gave it a lot of fame, by the way. It's a gorgeous place. I mean, it really is. It's history. It goes back, let's say, to 7,000 BCE, and it's been exploited by, I should say, well, just about well, first of all, it was besieged by conquerors and pirates.
Mhm.
Pirates that terrorized the Aegean. I mean, they would go after, it went out to all the islands, take booty, slaves, women, and often kill the people that they didn't take. They had to endure that. They had to then endure the fact that they had these massive, beautiful forests that people came to plunder. And who did it? Forestry, indiscriminate forestry. You had a voracious charcoal industry that would make charcoal these. And then you had, in more recent days, you had developers coming there who wanted to make room for more farming, or some wanted more development. So you had all these things coming down on this island. And yet it has this magical ability to sustain long lives. And you try to think, what's the reason for it? Well, it's a very rocky, mountainous place.
Mhm.
And it has lousy ports, but it has beautiful seas for fishing. It has the natural resources that has it so that people grow their own food. They live off goat milk. They live off the wine that they make. They have all fresh air. And the biggest thing of all, aside from hiking up and down, everywhere they go, they have to hike up and down hills, is they have no stress.
Mhm.
Everything is tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. And that's the kind of island it is. I mean, it's really, I've been there with some buddies who are Korean, and nobody talks about the fact he got his name obviously from Macarius, who didn't listen to his daddy and flew too close to the sun. The wax on his wings melted and he went boom,
Right.
like a rock onto the rocks just off the southern coast, they say. But it's a really interesting place. And you can also, you better know how to drive though. It's very tricky, those roads, very tricky.
Windy roads.
Winding, narrow, dirt, and also like you're looking down a mountainside and there's no guardrail, so you better be careful. But and when you go into the towns, well, this is not just there's many towns like this. People would build a house, and then someone would build a house across the street. And it was fine. The donkey went by, the horse went by, the tractor trailer didn't go by until many years later. And the other cars didn't go by until many years later. And so it changed. And like you step out, you better look very closely around the corners, especially when tourists are around on their bikes and everything. Boom, boom. But that's everywhere. That's a situation that's everywhere. Bit of the charm.
It does sound beautiful. Do the residents there interact much with the other islands?
Well, they basically lived on. They've been self-sufficient virtually their entire lives, their entire history, because they were preyed upon, as I said. One of the other things that they found is the government would use their island as a place for political exiles. And they always had to be self-sufficient to sustain themselves. World War II has brought starvation in much of Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had World War. Then after that, you had 4 years of civil war between the nationalists and the communists, and that was again across Greece. After that, the Greek government decided they were going to turn the island of Icaria into essentially a penal colony for communists who did not have the right political views, so to speak. They put 13,000 over there. and they were forbidden to interact with the locals, and they were prescripted in what they could do. Well, they needed a place to stay, and they were getting very little from the government. So these people, they found any space available on the island. They found old houses, whatever, a shack, a hut, and most of them were in such a terrible state of disrepair that the people who were there, and they were a lot of them were doctors, lawyers, educators, creative types, the intellectual, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
They were pushed to. They rebuilt the place, and the Carriots, who had pretty much stuck to themselves, they didn't trust anybody coming there, really didn't look upon them as criminals. They looked upon them as guests and friends. And so the government, which had planned to create an isolation chamber, so to speak, for unconventional political thought in their mind, created really a sanctuary and a breeding ground for political dissidents. In 2004, a year before, so for the 2004 Olympics, the Greek government announced they had finally captured the most notorious terrorist organization, or crushed the most notorious terrorist organization in Greece. It's a group that had kidnapped, killed, and robbed for over 30 years without ever being caught. And when they caught them, guess what? The key leaders were from Icaria. So there you go. Now, how can you not find a good story with all that kind of history?
Exactly. Several.
Oh yeah, it's all worked together. It all I couldn't believe it. And I really meant it when I said the writing gods. It really hit me. I said, where am I going to put this story? I got to get Maggie in this, and then it went bang, and it just all came together.
But that's because you're such a good author. Someone else would see that and think, well, that's interesting, but not take it much further. You were able to develop this amazing story that goes along with it and encompasses all those things that you've talked about with the island.
Well, thank you. It's, people say, how do you come up with your stories? And I say, I wish I knew. It'd be easy to come up with them. I don't know how they come. You just start typing. I'm working a new one now, and I just started typing. And I said, not just started, I've been working. And this character that I'd introduced, she won't go away. She just won't go away. She keeps coming back. And I keep saying, but you're not supposed to be in this book. But there she is, and we'll see what happens.
It always amazes me when authors talk that way, that they can't control the characters they've created. I find this fascinating.
But it's true. Tim Halloran, I was talking to you before about him. He and I were talking yesterday. He's having the same problem. He says, where's this person come from? So that's it. You feel like your family. You feel like you're in that zone, which is good. And I'm not complaining. I'm obviously a seat of the pantser, where I make it up as I go along. You have the outliners who really have everything booked out beforehand. And then you have people who fall in the middle somewhere. But I like the way I write, and I guess that's why I write like this. Others want to write with a big outline. That's fine. There's no answer. When I taught writing at a university, I said, don't try to be like me. Don't try to be like anybody. Be yourself, because it's how you're wired.
Yes.
How you're wired. And that's all matters. And when you would think, if you write
self in your writing, it's how you're wired.
Somebody just came on. You need to mute yourself, please. Okay, go ahead.
If you write, I threw off my thought here. If you write, so from the seat of pantsers, your risk is you're going to run off in different crazy directions, and you end up in a lot of rabbit holes you got to get out of and come back. Mm-hmm. While if you write from an outline, it's stale. You end up feeling you've done it already. Now you're redoing it, because you thought it all through. Those are the risks. But the one thing that saves it is if you have the right editor, you can't tell which way the person wrote the book, because they're used to looking at books, and they can say, no, this is this, this is this, and this is this. And so that's important for everybody. So you can't tell what it was, but that's basically the way it works.
Now, you mentioned an editor. Have you had the same one for a long time, or do you work with different ones?
I have a beta reader I work with, but I've had the same editor. The same editor has been Barbara Peters.
Okay.
She was the publisher when Poison Pen.
Mhm.
So Barbara's been my editor forever.
All right.
But it's, you know, people read the book. That's a different thing than having the editor. And she's been together, and there was one time when someone was trying to take me to become to leave Poison Pen and go with them for purposes of making a much bigger career for myself.
Uh-huh.
And I'm loyal to people who are loyal to me. And I said to the person, let me see if I understand this correctly. If I really bust my hump and really work very hard and do everything you're asking me to do for the next 10 years, I might actually be able to retire to a Greek island and write books. Yeah, that's exactly what happened at Lab. This was all done in front of the Poison Pen people. It was nothing underhanded. Well, Barbara saw me after that at some point. She said, I want you to know that if you wish to leave, it's fine. It's up to you. It's your decision. But if you do, I'll hunt you down and kill you.
No subtlety there.
That's been our relationship. God bless her. God bless her.
Well, that's wonderful. It's nice to have that working relationship.
Yes, it is.
As well as being a friend.
Yes, it is.
So you said you were working on something else already.
Well, yeah, I'm working on, I can't believe it's book 13. I am. I also, during COVID time, I completed a standalone, which I'm not sure where I'm going to go with it, but I finished it. It's a completely different series, completely different thing.
Okay.
And I like doing it because every once in a while, even as a lawyer, when I was a trial lawyer, you got to blow out the pipes, as they say. You got to get yourself something different. If you're always defending cases, you ought to prosecute a case. I don't mean in a criminal way, but you got to prosecute a case once in a while to get to see the other side. Otherwise, you lose perspective.
Okay,
so
that makes sense.
Yeah. So I wrote this book this time in a different way, and I want to make sure to keep my sort of Greek things out of it as best I could, but some sneak in. I can't help that. And we'll see what we do with that book. But I like doing it. It's something I've been meaning to write for, 8-10 years. It's modified a lot, but it was fun. I did it during COVID times.
And is it going to be published through Poison Pen also, or?
Well, that's exactly the point I'm at right now. We're working on seeing how to do that. That's exactly the point I'm at. I'm not sure where it's going to be published or what, but it's
exciting to hear, though. I know that many authors do that when they have a series. They like to go off and do something quite different.
Yes. As I say, it was during COVID times.
Mm-hmm.
So that in order to be able to I had the time to do it. So I said, why not? I also finished the new one, which this one I meant that one. I'm pointing at my waters.
It means you crammed a lot into this last couple of years. So that's a lot of thinking, a lot of writing, a lot of planning.
Well, I also wrote an article I wrote a column for Athens Insider Magazine, which is the number one English language magazine in Greece. And it was called, ready for this? Mm-hmm. Corona Chronicles. I mean, that was not going to, we started it early on, the pandemic, based upon the thought that I could write about how the arts were being affected by this. And it drifted off to me writing about my time at the farm, the bear that lives there, my views on where everything is headed, my views on politics. Around December, after I don't know 7 or 8 of these articles, I spoke to the publisher. I said, you know what? I don't think this is a thing that's going to be able to continue. It's gotten too severe. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something anybody wanted to see, or I really wanted to keep writing about and observing, because all the numbers, we went from modest numbers up through this roof, and it was a hard way to do it. So we put that aside. So there were articles that took time to really write. So it gave me an outlet. And of course I write once a week. I write for Murderers Everywhere. I do Saturdays at Murderers Everywhere. And this gives, there's a few things to do. Plus, I was just married. I mean, Barbara and I have been together for many years, but we got married in December of 2019.
Okay.
In January early February 2019, we went into seclusion in the middle of a farm in the middle of nowhere, New Jersey. And we were locked in together for a year and a half, a little longer. We're still married, are we? So, yeah, we're still married. So I guess that worked. So there were other things to do aside from just, writing, like dealing with the plumbing.
You really keep yourself busy, which is great. And you had to, it's wonderful because you had something to distract yourself, several somethings to distract you from what was going on around you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's for sure. But you know what? Your mind is such, and I've heard this from many, you couldn't write. There's like a fog. You're like, and I wrote something about it. Your head's you're writing through a haze because no matter what you want to say around you is death. I mean, death. It's not an existential comment. It's there. And it was through all of this, and you had to be careful what you did, where you went. And it just, and then of course you have people pass on, but it was hard for people to concentrate. So you really had to work harder.
Yes. I think almost everyone had the same reaction. One, it was the isolation, and the other was the stress of what was going on and not being able to do anything really about it. So I think we are all suffering from the same syndrome right now, to varying degrees. But people like you that write these books and get us something that we can read that takes us somewhere else really helps.
Well, thank you. That's all. That's the best you could hope to hear. I mean, to be absolutely honest with you, when I wrote this book and I said, I don't know if this is what kind of book this is. I mean, I don't know if it's good or bad. Of course, I never know. Most writers don't know. And I said, this could be my worst. I don't know. And I was very careful. I wrote about COVID because I do not believe COVID is something that people want to hear about. Right? But you can't ignore it. So I just had it in the background. But when Booklist gave it a star review and said it was my best yet, I said, whoa, what book was they reading here? I was very happy. I mean, it was, and then Publishers Weekly says similar things, and others, and they say they feel, and they got what I was doing. They said, it's the family. I feel like I'm meeting up with a family when I read this book. And in fact, somebody even said, finally, Maggie got her book. Well, it's the reason why I did it. So that made me feel very good. It keeps you going.
It has to, because the reviews were wonderful. And with just reason, it's an incredible book. They get deeper. Every book you write has gotten deeper into the country as a whole, and you've taken separate parts of it and focused on, which is wonderful. And then you develop these characters that everybody cares about, and you're carrying them along. I think it's very refreshing to be able to go back to a series each year and meet them again. And that's really what you're doing as a reader. You're saying, oh my gosh, they're here again, and welcome them.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. One of the problems is that each character, believe it or not, has their own sort of fan club. And I'd say put that in quotes. People say, why didn't you give Yanni more time or Maggie more time or this? So I said, there's only so many pages here. So we try to work it out. But there are people that normally were getting some space. They just couldn't fit them into this book in any way that was meaningful. So that's the other side. You've got to help the family stay together, give them equal time on the show here. It's more like this Trop family singers.
No, I think did you get to do many events locally? Have you felt up to it with the knee surgery?
No. Well, in order to do the events locally, I'd have to have them basically set out ahead of time. You just can't say that. My surgery was February 2nd.
Okay.
And I assumed from what everyone else had told me that I would not be in any shape to be doing any events for several months. So I said, what the heck? And I withdrew from Left Coast Crime too. I had 3 panels. I withdrew from there. Lo and behold, I better knock on wood, I was walking without a cane within a week.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I walked out without one. And the PD people said they never saw anybody come back so quickly. I don't know what, I said, no idea what it is, and I don't want to push the luck. And so I was told, don't overdo it. So I had thoughts of doing on-site, and I had thoughts of going to Left Coast Crime. My surgeon said, I don't recommend you flying so soon afterwards. I said, okay, that's all I got to hear. And also, you know, you walk the streets. I decided it wasn't worth the risk. As much as I love doing in-person events, I just didn't want to take the risk.
No.
And I couldn't fly to California. What I am hoping for is that there is going to be it's the inaugural Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books, which is taking place. It's a Saturday. I think it's May 15th or 16th. I'm sure I'm off on the date. It's taking place in Pittsburgh, and they've asked me to represent the mystery community.
Oh.
Now that's where I grew up, and they're actually taking the events taking place within 2 blocks of my high school.
Oh.
And so that's and I can get there propped up the right way in a car for the drive. Could do that, and I have family there, so I get a place to stay, which is easy. So that's going to be my first journey out. That's a month and a half from now, so I should be able to do that. But as much as I would love to be there, and especially Book Carnival, I just decided I couldn't do that.
Oh no, nobody wants to fly right now, quite honestly. And I know a lot of people are doing it, but they're canceling so many flights all the time. I know, you really wouldn't want to be waiting in an airport overnight. No, that's smart, and I think Pittsburgh sounds wonderful. That'll make you feel better too, back into it again.
Yeah, I agree. It happens to be old friends who are involved with it, so they are setting it up. So it'll be fun, I'm sure.
Now, BoucherCon will be in San Diego next year.
Yeah, oh, I'll definitely be. That's knocking on glass. I'll definitely be there. But this year I'm planning to go to Minneapolis. I go to Milwaukee, I'll miss it. I'm going to Minneapolis. I think that's where it's going to be. So I plan to do that. That should be fine. I also passed going to Crime Fest in Bristol, UK, which I've gone to for several years. I love that.
Yeah, I hear that's really wonderful.
And Bristol's a lot of fun. Crime Fest is fun. Good people. It's spun off essentially, well, from BoucherCon Left Coast Crime model as well. And last night, as I mentioned to you, I had dinner with my friend Anne Saller, the Icelandic writer.
Yes.
Her husband. We're all good friends.
You pronounce that so well. I stutter.
Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. I would say Irsa is like a star in the world, and as is her compatriot, Ragnar Jonasson. But because her name is spelled Sigur and mine is Siger. At signings, I'll be sitting right next to her, and I'll just watch the line going into her. I said, "Do you mind if I sign some of your books?" She goes, "No, go right ahead." So that's funny. It's like it's an inside joke among the writers who are willing to have a sense of humor.
I find that mystery writers are the most congenial bunch. You all support each other. You all recommend each other. It's very heartwarming to see that from a bookseller's point of view.
I agree with you on that. We won't say what we know is the most competitive group. We all know what that one is. We won't say it, but I really agree with you. I mean, they've been so open and so warm and wonderful to it, and it's great. And I don't know if I went on the board of Belcher, ended up being chair of BoucherCon for 2 years, and it was a sense of giving back, and it was a sense of helping the community and the people who do that. And these are all fan-driven conventions. Well, BoucherCon is all fan-driven. And they're not paid. It's done because they want to help the community. They want to help. They want to be with their friends. They want to be with the writers. And writers love coming to these. They really do. We had at Iceland Water last time, Ian Rankin, Anthony Horowitz, a group. I'm not forgetting others. They're all there. They love it. We all hung out together. It was just fun, freezing our butts up. No, it wasn't that cold, but it was fun. And that's what it's all about, the camaraderie. Yes. And everyone went to everyone else's panel. So because there was only one track of panels. No, there weren't competing tracks.
Oh, all right. That's a good idea.
Oh, it's a great idea. But you can't do it with a large group. If you have 1,000 people or more than that coming, you need to offer more.
Mhm.
So that's how we do it.
Oh, that's great. Anything else you want to tell us about the next book, or and which do you think is going to come out first, your standalone or your next one for Greece?
All depends on the publisher. It all depends on the publisher. I don't know. I mean, I would say that since the standalone is finished, I would think that would come out first, but you can never tell.
Mhm.
Publishing, do I have to tell you? Publishing is so, what's a good word I could use these days? Publishing is so blank these days.
It's a challenge from the bookseller's point of view of just trying to get stock and get things taken care of.
So we'll say challenging.
Challenging. I think that's a good word. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking, I've got to look to see if we've got any questions posted from anyone. And I'm not seeing, why am I not seeing that?
Well, I can talk about anything if you want.
Yeah, go right ahead. I would love it. I'm looking for questions.
I understand. I understand.
We have just very observant people.
What?
I'm going to put it back on gallery view so that we can find out who wants to
That's
say
fine.
what.
You let them do. I mean, after all, the purpose of a mystery is to restore order to a fractured society. And to fractured society means that we cannot get people to ask questions. We'll make it happen. We'll ask each other questions, but that's fine. No.
All right.
But it really is. That is the order. That is the purpose of it.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Well, think about it this way. You start off the book with a murder. There's probably nothing that would be more heinous to life than death that way. So you start off with a murder. And now you've got to bring some sort of resolution to it, which turns books, mysteries, into optimistic books, because you're taking a horrible beginning and turning it into a final conclusion that brings you relief. That resolution is there. You don't have that in life anywhere else. And even in the deepest noir, you bring resolution to probably a part of the protagonist character. Something happens. There is at the end a sense of relief. There's few outliers, but that's not what it is. It's all about that. And that's how I view it, at least.
I never thought of it quite that way, but you're right. But that hadn't crossed my mind. Mark is nodding.
He wants
Are you
more
on?
talk. He's muted. No, he's on.
I mean, I can speak, but I do agree with what Jeff just said. I've been trying to write in my old age here, and it keeps turning to memoir lately versus fiction. So it's a different way of looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the memoir is fine. A lot of fiction comes from that. I mean, we writers, I'm sure you, Mark, as well. We writers are voracious body snatchers in a sense.
Yes.
What we do is we'll see somebody somewhere who has an image that, wow, that character looks crazy. You don't know what they're like personality wise. And maybe the personality you meet them, they're completely different than they look, but you sort of make a note, as I would in my notebook, make a note about the character, where they look. And then later on, somebody will talk or act in a certain way. And you say, wow, the way that person behaves is bizarre or great or whatever. And you keep that in a note. Before you know it, you take the character shape that you like and the character sense that you like, and you put them together in a completely new character. And so you're finding them. So memoir is the same thing. As I'm writing, things will come out about my own life, but I don't do it. It bore people to do it, or else get me arrested to tell it all. So I don't do that. But what you'll do is I will find a way to merge it. And it comes and it works, but you don't run away from the memoir aspect. But as someone told me, God bless his soul, was I'd written a book with my son. It was basically, I'm getting a little off my point, but it's not going to be that far off of it. My son and I had written a book 20 years ago, as a matter of fact, in which we each described our own take on a certain event in our lives, so we could compare how we saw it coming from different places. And I thought it was a great idea, and I won't get into that anymore. And I told it to somebody, and in fact, I think I don't know, maybe it was Tom Perry who said, you know what? My view of memoirs is, unless you're a famous athlete or something else, who's interested? I mean, that's the attitude people have. They don't care about your memoir. That's maybe your family does. And that was a good point. And so what I'm coming back to is, you can use the memoir, but find a way to make it into something else. If you have a really interesting, crazy story in your life, just put another name to it. Call it Polyukram, Poleuc. That's the first name, and Kram, the second name. So call that as your character.
Put it all backwards, right?
Exactly. But I'm saying, you just find a way to make it and have fun with it. Don't feel, because if you're writing a memoir, you feel, oh, I got to make sure I got this absolutely right. I did that. What did I do that day? You don't need to do that. This is fiction, man. It was like when I left practicing law, it was a great freedom because I didn't have to I still marshal facts to support a conclusion. As a lawyer, it was legal conclusion. As a writer, it's a fictional conclusion. But I no longer had to tell the truth. I could do what I wanted with it. So do it with your memoir, the same thing. Just go with it. Just make sure that your wife agrees.
This has been wonderful. You're looking so good, and I'm so happy for you with the success of this book. And
Thank you.
the neat thing is behind you, which is so nice. You've got nothing but up going forward.
I thank you for that blessing. I thank you for that blessing.
And I
wish you the best.
Well, I thank you for this evening. It's been very enjoyable. This has been recorded, and it will be on YouTube, Book Carnival's YouTube eventually. So people can check it out if they weren't able to be with us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you, if not sooner, then at least next year.
I look forward to that too. Thank you.
Anytime you've got something out, let me know.
I will. It's like, as I said before, it's like family.
Yes.
And speaking of families, I want to thank the Scheck family and Carol and Mark, of course. All of you.
There's probably a few others in the background that chose not to show.
I salute all of thee.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Jeff, it's been a wonderful evening.
Thank you.